Hello, and welcome once again to Neurologic. I'm your host, Leo Jones.
Hi guys, welcome to KC Caffeine. My name is Jayson. And in honor of Autism Acceptance Month, we have decided to do a crossover podcast extravaganza. Blue will be here momentarily. She is getting some stuff ready, but I figured we should go ahead and get started. On this episode, we will cover intersectionality, what it is, how it applies to the autistic community, and what are the similarities and differences in comparison to other communities. How are you doing today?
I'm actually pretty good. I've really been looking forward to this because this is something that is not talked a lot about in the outer autism community, and by that, we described it in my last episode, but there is the autistic community, which is, to put it simply, full of autistic individuals, those who are actually diagnosed and consider themselves autistic. And then outside of that sphere, you have the autism community, which is like parents, professionals, others along the line, anybody that rubs shoulders or elbows with autistic individuals. So in that autism community, this isn't really talked about.
Right.
Most of the time, autism is considered a straight white male disease and referred to as such. So, which all those things are completely erroneous and completely wrong. So, I've been looking forward to this. I want to kind of see similarities and commonalities between what you've gone through personally, as well as Blue, and what can be found in the autistic community, especially among those who are not white, who are not straight, and who are not male.
Right. I actually thought this was an interesting topic of conversation. Again, it's one that, you know, we've touched on a little bit in episodes past, but I thought it would be a good thing to kind of come back to again, mainly because I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface a little bit the last time, and we weren't able to really dive deep, and you know we may not be able to dive deep this time either. But I feel like, you know, this is a conversation that we need to have more often. Plus, I just think you're a great person to be a guest on the show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be doing this with you. This is my first crossover, and it's the first podcast, or one of the first episodes I've done during April. So it's a big milestone for me. So as I've said before, you were actually one of the I'll use the word, but I can't find a better one. One of the inspirations to having me start my own podcast.
Aww.
Yeah, so because you did it, and it was great to listen to. I thought, maybe I should do this, because there's a lot I liked about it, and the control you have over that really resonated with me. So I've been glad to do it. This will be the 10th episode, so that'll be good. We finally had 100 downloads, so that's over the course of all the episodes we've had. So yeah,
doesn't that feel good?
It does.
It feels really good. Like, we just hit, not to toot our own horns, I feel like we're just about to spend the next 20 minutes jerking each other off, but you know, that's not what we're here for. But I just hit, and it's weird, and we just hit I think 1,300 downloads.
That's awesome.
Which I'm like, oh, this is amazing. You know, it's because it's just me in my house with my friends, you know, and we're just talking about things that we, you know, that I feel like should be talked about everywhere.
Absolutely.
And I think it's how we make the world a better place, is having these conversations. So the fact that there are that many people who have decided that, hey, I'm going to listen to, you know, this loud homosexual and his friends have conversations, you know, I'm like, that's awesome.
It does feel really good, and I hope that we both will continue. But in regards to this episode, I kind of wanted to talk. I'm not exactly sure where to start, because there's just so much.
Right.
There's so much. I mean, and maybe I think I want to start with an article that I saw recently, because I've got some bullet points here, but I'm apparently going to ignore them. One of the first ones was an article from NPR that stated African American and Latino children are often diagnosed later than their white peers. And one of the things that sort of got to me a lot was whenever it said that autism spectrum disorder affects people of all races and ethnicities, but research shows that African American and Latino children are diagnosed at older ages than white children. And I was kind of wondering, is this really due to parents not reporting as much to doctors? Is it because they don't have access to medical care because of the, blatant inaffordability
right.
of insurance? Or is it because doctors are more likely to misdiagnose these children with conduct disorders instead of autism, such as oppositional defiant disorder or the like?
Well, I think there's a little bit of everything in that. I think that as I remember growing up, there was always this idea that, the spare the rod, spoil the child mentality. And so in that, when there is a kid, there is a child, and I don't have children, so I can't speak for, and I don't have an autistic child, obviously, because I don't have children. So I can't speak for, parents these days now, but I can speak to my experience growing up and having that there were children that were, that thought differently. And I've always looked at autism not so much, and this might be wrong on my part, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, as in a lot of ways looking at the world differently than the way that the normal people, and I put heavy air quotes.
You're pretty spot on. We actually use the term neurotypical, which apparently now I've been told by some that those who are neurotypical, who have autistic children or know somebody autistic, they see being called neurotypical as a bit of a slur. Which I'm like, of all the things to be called, it's like no, we're not giving up that word.
Insert hard eye roll here. But I think that it's when you don't understand something, especially in the Black community, there's always this idea that there are two ways that you can handle it. You can either correct the behavior with spankings or violence, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, spank your children. That's not my business, But there's the need to do that or give it to God. I'm just going to pray about it. And there isn't a lot of, hey, let's figure out what the root problem is for this behavior or why my child is acting in this manner. And so there's that. And I think there's also, the inaffordability of healthcare. When you are trying to feed your children, and one of your kids is acting up and you're like, I can either feed my babies or figure out what's going on. Feeding my babies becomes what's most important. And, then the other thing that you see, there's that stigma. If there is, a child of color acting out, it's seen as more of a behavioral problem and not necessarily a neurological issue, or anything of that manner. It's not. It's more seen as, oh, this child is just bad. Not that there could be something else, or they're just disruptive. I remember when I was growing up, there was a kid I used to babysit for. It's the first time I'd ever been, around anyone who was autistic. And we knew, cutest little black boy ever. Like, his parents knew he was autistic. I didn't know what that meant. They had done all of the tests. And the way that it was explained to me, and up until I met, you and other autistic people, I've always just kind of how I thought of it is that you're looking at the world, whereas I look at the world through like a pane of glass. They're looking at the world with a pane of glass with cracks in it.
I mean, it's right. It's actually you're really pretty much spot on to a certain extent. There's just different ways, but it's because it is, as my previous guest said, Shana Geyer, it's born, not made. So from the hardest part is when somebody says, well, what is it like to be autistic? I have a hard time describing it because I've never experienced not being autistic.
Right.
So it's like usually when people put something together trying to make, it's like I usually will go with it because I'm like, if this helps understand, that works. That's fine. That works perfectly okay. As long as it's not, oh, you're autistic, then, it's like you can't feel empathy or something like that. I mean, that we had that issue recently. A Duke University professor who was speaking at a Unitarian church described various leaders of the Libertarian Party as somewhat autistic because they lacked solidarity or empathy and had a hard time with human relationships.
Well,
which I mean, I don't want to disparage libertarians. They're very unique people. They have very, very odd beliefs, but they in the entire realm of political beliefs, they're wacky, but they're not trying to actively murder an entire race of people. So I'm like, well, they have a spot at the table.
Right.
So, and when I saw this, I was like, so you're taking the parts of autism that you think you know and deciding to slam somebody with it.
Right.
Which was just completely unacceptable to me. So, but with what you're saying, you're following through with that. Tell me more about your experience babysitting this kid.
Well, it was very, and this was more than 20 years ago.
You're not going to offend me, so you can.
No, it's. I mean, it's a lot of it is trying to kind of remember things. I remember there being a lot of times where I felt like I wasn't getting through, or I wasn't being effective. Because I was never one of those people when I babysit. I was never one of those babysitters who was just like, their kids are in the room doing whatever, and I'm on the couch watching TV. It was always, okay, I'm playing with the kids, I'm interacting because that's what I'm there for. And so it was him, and he had a little brother, and it was the little brother was smart and precocious and all of these things. And I'm not saying that the autistic kid wasn't. He just didn't respond. He wasn't responsive. He just wanted to sit and read his books and wanted to be left alone. And when he, did have an episode, and again, heavy quotes, I had a really hard time trying to, calm him down or get him, because I didn't see things the way that he did, and I wasn't able to. And I was again 13. At 13, I didn't really know what autism was. I didn't possess the mind to try new things. So I would then get upset and get frustrated.
Right.
And it was easier to remove him from the space than it was to try to find out what the issue was, or what was going on, or what it was he needed. His parents never came and said like, "Oh, you did this," or you it was never a thing of like physical violence, or I was just removing him from the space because I didn't know what I was supposed to do or how to handle it. And we never had a conversation over, when he does this is what calms him down. It was just like, hey. They
didn't let you know, or
I don't mean he was autistic, but like as far as like how to handle, no, there wasn't really any conversation about that.
They just like, he's autistic, bye, we're going out to dinner, or
they're going out to dinner, or there's this, and it was like, just leave it, essentially they were just like, just leave him alone. But I think a lot of it was at the time they didn't necessarily know what to do either. This was they were relatively young. They were in their early 20s when I was babysitting them. So it wasn't like, it was military. So there wasn't a lot of resources or a lot of these are the tactics and things that you can use. It was just like, we're all in the dark together. And so he would come, but he had a super close bond with his mom, and so when she would come home, he would calm down, and she would be like, I just I don't, okay, and so in my mind for a long time, whenever I thought of autism, that is what I thought. And that was what because that's the only interaction that I knew at the time. Because at the time we didn't really have a spectrum. You know what I mean? They didn't really, that was the weird kid.
Right, yeah.
And so the term autism was just for those extreme cases. And, now I can look and go, okay, now I understand that, he's just, he's frustrated because he's trying to communicate something that I'm not getting. And, so now I can understand that. Whereas before I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, do you want something to drink?
Yeah, it's like you weren't given the tools to understand, like, this is what is going on here. This is, whenever he does the following, this is his communication for food, drink, leave me alone, don't leave me alone, that sort of thing.
Right. And so, for me, and to kind of go back to what we were talking about, like speaks to some of the reasons why it doesn't get checked and why it takes so long for families of color to even look into that as a possibility, is because they don't know. They're not given the tools to accurately say, is this a problem that I need to diagnose, or is this something that we need to figure out what the root cause is on it, and is this just my child acting out because of whatever behavior, any other reason, or I don't have the the financial means to pay for doctors to to run tests, or I don't have
you don't have the time to take off to take
right.
a kid in and to get it go through the 2 years of processing and accessibility, all the accessibility testing and all the other stuff.
Right. Or I can't, I don't have the my health insurance because I work at some, minimum wage job, and health insurance is very minimal. They're not going to cover these things. Yeah. So, do I lose my, standard of living, which for a lot of them isn't much, but do I lose that to figure out what's happening here, for this child, which then could endanger the lives of my other children? And I'm not saying that any of these things are valid or not valid. It just is what it is.
I think it's more valid, especially because, if you look back at the research, when this was first being studied, as I would say through Asperger's into Dr. Kanner, he didn't study anybody else but white people. Right. Literally, it's all he tested on. So, and nobody really questioned that during that time. So it went through and over the decades, and then you've got to the 80s, and all of a sudden, nobody's really checking on this, and nobody's looking into how this works. The thing is, according to the CDC, the rates of autism are essentially identical across racial and ethnic groups. There's no the rates are not different.
Right.
So it plays no part in it. But when you look at the children and adults actually diagnosed, white children are 30% more likely to receive an autism diagnosis and 50% more likely than Hispanics, according to the 2014 data, which is not that long ago. I don't think that's changed that much.
Right.
So I think it plays, I think you're bringing up is much more realistic and much more factual than you might realize.
It's and the thing about it that's sad is, when you look at those rates and the things that you just said, and then we look at things like prison rates, and we look at the dropout rates and graduation rates when it comes to to minority households, and you wonder how many of these people who are in prison or on the streets have some form of autism or on the spectrum that we're not diagnosed, and we still don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just comes down to that. Like, we still just like, they did this, but the way that they are seeing the world isn't the same way that we see the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a difference between, because you said something, you just mentioned about the, empathy. I think that not having empathy and I think that there's a difference to me between Asperger's and autism. I know that they're part of the same spectrum.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a distinct difference between the two. Because Asperger's, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, that is the inability to feel empathy, and
the empathy thing only plays into it because during studies, again going back into research, it was determined because we didn't react, or the test subjects didn't react in the socially normative way of empathy.
Okay.
The problem is that we do feel empathy, we just don't register it the same way. They look at, well, you didn't register it the way, I expect you to feel empathy, so then you don't have it.
Okay.
The absence of that is the problem, and they don't really talk about that too much. They just slap it on there as though, well, this is it. Well, not necessarily. For some autistics, they will represent it in different ways, such as if you're crying, they might give you a tissue, or might just, leave you to it or something, or give you a blanket. But they don't say, oh, I'm so sorry. There's not the typical reaction. Others, though, actually feel empathy, but it's so profound, like they get overwhelmed with that feeling. Like right. If you're watching a documentary or something, you feel that it becomes so strong of an emotion so much that it is almost intolerable. It's almost painful. And so they kind of shut down from that. They feel it, but it's too much, and that hurts so badly they have to kind of push away from that.
I think I'm closer to the shut down one. I just don't do emotions whatsoever. Like, I don't like them. I would prefer that people not come around me with them. That's just me, though.
I mean, they do feel them, and whenever autistic individuals, especially those who are with high support needs, who need devices to speak, whenever they given a chance to communicate, they will say, "No, I do have these feelings. You just don't see them because I don't react the way you're expecting or that society deems is appropriate."
So do you think that because when we think of and I say we in the me sense, when I think of someone who, because there are people who don't experience empathy,
sociopaths, for example.
the sociopaths, for example. Do you think of that as something that is also on the spectrum, or is that something wholly and completely different?
I tend to think it's a lot more different because the research that was done that we've had has been barely scratching the surface and oftentimes in the wrong direction.
Okay.
I mean, we have progressed in research over the past couple of decades, but I mean, this honestly, we weren't really aware of autism until pre-World War II. I mean, you've got Hans Asperger researching it with his kids. The Nazis come into Austria, and people have always labeled him as a Nazi. Well, he had a choice, like most doctors. It was either, you leave, and we're going to destroy all of these test subjects because they have a disability, or you can work for us and study them, and you can publish research under our name.
Right.
You went with option 2 to keep them alive. But then you still have a bias on that research because it's only this select group of people. And there's not enough diagnostic tools to actually make a difference in like, okay, this is what actually is being registered here. Because it's the traditional, well, they didn't smile whenever I showed them a happy picture or a picture of a dog or whatever. They didn't cry when they saw, someone in a casket. But they've started actually moving that and diagnosing better. I mean, the number one reason for rates going up in this country for the past 10 years, they've looked at it, they've always said autism epidemic. It's not true. Over the past 3 years, it's plateaued. 1 in 68 so far it's plateaued. And that's not because of power lines or vaccines or any other bullshit thing. It's because we've actually been able to detect better and diagnose better who actually is autistic.
Right. Correcting
for misdiagnoses, correcting for non-diagnoses. I mean, we have middle-aged people getting diagnoses at this point.
Right.
The worst part with that, though, I've had my dad and my friend Ryan, who were diagnosed over the past few years. They got a very different response when they went to the doctor. It was, well, I can give you diagnosis, but what good is it going to do you?
Right.
Which is just, completely demoralizing. Because you're sitting there, you finally learned something about yourself that you didn't know, something you can research and look into, and you're not just like, I'm just weird or strange or broken. No, I have this and I can look at it. Now you're being told, well, okay, I can give it to you, but what good is it going to do?
It's not going to do any good because because it's interesting that you say that, because that's a thing that happened the other day. Is, while we're talking about intersectionality, someone on my feed, who shall now remain nameless, made a comment about there being, way more gay people now than there were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or blah, blah, blah. And much like you just said, with there being, we're better at picking it up, we're better at diagnosing, we're more comfortable coming out now. So it's not a matter of there being more people with autism or more gay people. We're just now in a world in which we can actually say that. We can actually come out and speak, or it can be diagnosed. So, I think that's really interesting. Like, that's an interesting thought. Like, and I've always been like, is it that we do have more autistic people, or that we are able to now say, hey, that's what this is. It's no longer just, oh, that's the kid in class who is weird, or that's the kid in class who does things that I don't understand. Yeah. It's now we can see this is what this is, because there's a history, and a diagnosis, and we've seen this behavior in others with the same, these same symptoms.
Yeah.
So, I just think people are dumb. I say all that to say people are stupid.
Well, whenever, there's way more gay. Like, no, actually, it's been, like, if you look back through history, it's just that people are like, well, since it wasn't recorded back then obvious. I'm like, we didn't have, in the past, we've been alive, I mean, for 3 decades.
Right.
We went from, technologically speaking, dial-up to, fiber optic cable at gigabit speeds. I mean, we went from not being able to talk to somebody across the world without using paper and pencil,
right, to
now doing it in seconds flat. Like, oh yeah, I talked to this guy in Amsterdam, whatever, that's, we talked about this or that or something else. I mean, that's a major sharp increase in sophistication.
Right.
And I see that, as you said, with medical diagnosis. But for him to say that, I'm like, no, they've always been.
There's been the same. And as a matter of fact, there is a, I don't know if you saw this in the news the other day, but the census for 2020, they put out a kind of a draft of what it would look like. And at first, people were excited because there was a question about being gay on the census.
I did not know that.
And then, people were like, we could, because that's how money is allocated and all of these, resources and things that are, we can get accurate counts of things. Well, they've taken that off. Because they don't want to know.
Of course, if we deny it, then it will it's not there,
But it's a thing of, as long as we don't, and I think that this goes with, people of color and, people who are autistic. Because I think there's a lot more in those struggles, for acceptance. Because, we don't talk about, we talk about discrimination towards race, and we talk about discrimination towards sex and towards gender and towards sexual orientation. But, there is a clear discrimination towards, people who are autistic and have this, there's a bias. And I wanted to talk to you about one more thing after we finish this. But there is, and it's not something that we talk about, and it's not something that we bring up in conversation, or is it something that we need to fix? And so I think that my second to last question for you would be, what are ways that you think we can have those conversations? And what are your experiences with that? You don't have to go into like, when I was 7, this happened to me. Like, you have to do all that. But like, have you experienced discrimination for being autistic? And if so, like, where, how do we combat that? What do we do to okay.
I'm gonna put the laptop down here for a second. Hopefully, because there's a lot there that I can unpack. So let me talk about the first one. If I have ever experienced discrimination on that, well, this actually goes into something I did want to talk about.
I'm sorry.
No. You're perfectly fine with this. This is good because this is you're following along on the same path I'm going on, and that's perfect. One of the things that I've talked about a lot is, for some autistics, they're able to kind of cloak or hide who they are. For autistic women, camouflaging themselves is a very, very common thing, oftentimes to the detriment of their own, self-identity. And I don't talk about it a whole lot because I've been able to do that, but I was still able to be diagnosed. And because of the fact that I'm a straight white male, it was, oh yeah, more likely, yeah, of course, you might be autistic. But for a lot of autistic women, they weren't diagnosed till later in life because, well, women are autistic,
Right.
They feel empathy, they get along socially, but that's not the case. A couple times I have been treated rather callously, depending on the autism advocacy groups. Not ones run by autistics, but ones run by neurotypicals. So organizations such as Autism Speaks and others, they have people there who would either treat me overly nice, as though I was in the Special Olympics, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it was the, hi,
oh god,
how are you? It's so good to see you.
You're like, I'm also,
I'm like,
here.
I'm like, what do you do now? And I was like, I work at a bank. Wow, so you get to handle money. That's amazing.
You're like, is it though? Is it amazing?
I'm just like, yeah, that's great. Check, please. Can I go? It's like, no. It's that side, which, and then of course you get you don't look autistic, which is an insult wrapped in a compliment. They don't kind of realize it when they hear that. It's like, okay, but I am.
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine if you got told, well, you don't seem black. you know, how insulting and offensive that would be.
And I will say that I am guilty because when you first, I was like, I didn't realize that you were autistic, and it's not that like.
But that's a little bit different from saying you look. You just didn't realize. That's when you said that to me. I didn't take offense to that because it was you just didn't realize.
Right.
Which was more a reflection of what I do when I handle myself in social situations, and I don't really disclose it because when I've had that kind of effect, which either been over the top. You know, you're an inspiration. To we're not going to let you handle such and such because, well, you're autistic. Right. They won't say it outright. I did have a couple of stories, actually, when I was chapter leader for a local autistic advocacy group. One was I was at a booth, manning a booth for a local Comic-Con. Just hanging out there, talking to people, whatever, just, being out there and aware. And we had someone come, this lady who was running a merchandise booth. And she came up, looked at me, and started talking to our executive director, which I'm like, that's fine, I don't care. Let her talk to whoever, I don't care, it's fine. I'll hand out stuff and be like, yeah, here's a pamphlet, whatever. She goes into the story about her kid. Her 14-year-old son is in high school. He does well with his grades, but she's not able to talk to him too much. She says, my son goes to school, comes home, goes immediately upstairs, gets on the computer. He gets on the computer, he talks to his friends on the computer, and he draws comics, and he sells them, and, that's fine and all, but he doesn't talk to me. He doesn't talk to anybody, and I don't know what he's going to do if he can't talk to people. So is there any way I could get him a job at, I don't know, like a grocery store or something where, he has to talk to people? And I thought about that for a second, and I broke down what she was saying, which the first one I'm like, okay, most teenagers don't want to talk to their parents that much anyway, so he's not really that far off.
Right.
Second of all, he is talking to people, but on the computer, which is increasingly common. I mean, I'm sure we both have friends from around the area and even probably around the globe that we've talked to at some point.
Right.
So it's like, this doesn't seem that stretched from
there are people that
typical stuff
with the way that the world is now. Like, for example, I run a D&D game with people, and most of them live in other cities. I have friends that I've never met face to face, but these are people that I consider friends. It's just the world that we live in. So if he's online talking to people, that's just what it is. That doesn't mean that he has any kind of social anxiety or anything like that. Some people just don't like people.
Yeah, but I was like, he's talking to people, so I'm like, that seems to be okay. And then what really caught my attention was when she said he draws comics and he sells them, and I was like, well, what website is he selling it on? Oh, he's selling it on DeviantArt. And all of a sudden, every gear in my head clicked. I'm like, wait a minute. You want to give him a job at a grocery store, but he's already got a career here. Right. Are you familiar with DeviantArt?
He probably has more money than you do right now.
But you know what DeviantArt is. Yeah. And for those of you who may not know, who are listening, DeviantArt is a very, very, I'm not going to say brutal, but very hard marketplace to get into. Now you can make comics for free and put them on there, but if people are buying your stuff, you are good. Right. Nobody goes there and goes, oh, you tried so hard. Yeah, I'll throw a few bills. No, they will tell you, your work sucks.
This is terrible. You kill yourself. Yeah. They will tell you to kill yourself.
Yeah. It is extremely a very, very, blunt place to go. But if you're selling stuff, that means you have a future. You have a career. And I said, well, he's selling stuff on DeviantArt. That means seems like he's pretty good. And she's, oh, yeah, he does good stuff. He does all the time. I'm like, well, it seems like he's got friends here. He's got a career lined up. I said, maybe instead of the grocery store, see if he'd like to take classes in graphic design at maybe the local community college or online. I mean, if he doesn't want to go to a classroom, he can do it online. If he gets a computer that's powerful enough, he can run all the Adobe Creative Suite stuff. He can do that. If he goes into this, he's got a legit career. And he may not make millions of dollars, but this is going to be a field that's only going to be more in demand as time goes by. I said, he seems like he's pretty well set. Right. Just talk to him and see if you want to do this. Go to community college, take the classes, and go from there. So I suggested all this, laid it out as best I could. She turns to me and says, oh, my son will never do that.
Why not?
I tried to explain it the best I could, and I just had to back up because I was gonna. Honestly, I was this close to shouting, and very, very close to shouting. Why the fuck not?
Right, he's already doing it.
Yeah, it's like he's already fucking doing it. He's got it right there. He's got his computer. He is doing these things. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
Honestly, I want to say honestly, if you were my mom, I wouldn't want to talk to you either. Maybe this is why he's not talking to you.
Because you don't listen.
Yeah, because you don't watch what he's doing, and you want to force him into a grocery store, which is not going to help him with what he's doing. Graphic designers are in demand. Nobody's really going to be like, oh, well, he didn't talk to me about sports balls, so I'll make it with somebody else. It's he does really good work. I tell him what I want. He produces it. That's it.
Right, and they're just. I think there are people who just don't do like. He has found his place in the world and his happy place. And rather than trying to make him someone else's, happy place, just foster that happy place for him.
Well, but she didn't want that because ultimately she wanted him to talk to her. And I'm like, then you need to meet him halfway.
Meet him where he's at.
Yeah. I mean, reach out. I mean, you may not get what exactly you're wanting, but you're not reaching out. You're demanding that he do something that he is not going to feel comfortable with and may go against who he is.
Right.
So I basically just kind of gave up. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to explain this whole thing because if I do that, she's going to get angry and I don't want to be having to deal with somebody who just gets really, I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't. Right. You obviously don't know what you're doing and your kid seems to be fine. They're going to raise enough money and then they'll move out and you'll ask why they're moving out, and then he'll just be like, because I don't want to live here anymore.
Because I don't.
I'm out.
Because I'm an adult and I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Right, so the last thing I wanted to ask you about, there is a television show called The Good Doctor. I'm certain you've heard of it.
Oh, boy.
I really wanted to get your thoughts on it, because, like, for me, I don't watch it because it makes me feel weird, and I don't mean that in, like, because it is, what's the best way to say this? Do you think it is an accurate depiction of autism in daily life? Because I feel like it's weird, and it just makes me.
Well, I'll put out some caveats. Number one, I haven't watched an episode, and I probably will not unless I am encouraged to do so by people that are closer to me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to waste my time. I did watch one episode of Atypical, and that was before The Good Doctor came out, and I absolutely hated Atypical. I thought it was one of the worst representations of autism. Have you heard about that show at all? Or?
I've heard like bits and pieces, but
it's pretty bad. Basically, they take a lot of the stereotypes about autism, and this character acts it out as he's going through high school, and it is horrible. It is just, I'm like, this is not good. If people are liking this, I'm like, that says a lot. That's really bad. But in regards to The Good Doctor caveat, I haven't seen it, but from what I've seen in clips and from other people, it reminds me less of an accurate representation and more of a Doogie Howser savant-like thing.
It is very much a Doogie Howser savant-like thing.
Okay. So my analysis was correct.
Yeah, it is very much that. It's. And I think part of it is it might be it's the way that he speaks in it just kind of makes me go, you don't have to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's very, and it's, I mean, that was his choice as an actor, and clearly people felt like that is, great. But I was just like, you don't have to do. I don't know anyone who speaks stilted, like. And I don't know a lot of people who are autistic, but I don't know.
Some do, but it also depends on the situation.
Right.
But the major problem I have with shows like this is that it's either they put the person, the center character who is autistic, either they're having many deficits and many problems.
Right. And
they have these, what is commonly like, or you have these obsessions or these special interests. I'm like, well, shit, everybody has special interests. We just don't call it that because we consider them to be hobbies or, things that you like to do. Or on the other side, you have the savant, which is that they're amazing at something, but they have trouble with some things that we can use as fodder for further episodes. So I don't think you're far off at all. And that weird feeling is probably from the fact that you have an understanding like this just seems very off.
It just seems very like...
People seem to like it better than Atypical. But
like I said, it's not a bad show in the sense that like it's the writing is good, you know.
It's no Roseanne reboot, so.
The thing about the Roseanne reboot, and this is actually a good because this is a good place to end that portion of the show and kind of talk some pop culture stuff really quick.
That works, yeah. Because I can look to this because I do have some questions for you, but I want to talk about this.
This is means we just have to do another episode soon before the end of the month.
Okay.
But let's talk about the Roseanne reboot for a second. Did you watch it?
No.
I did.
Oh.
This is why I watched it. Number one, I loved Roseanne. Loved it.
Me and my girlfriend do. We love the old Roseanne.
The old Roseanne is so, and I was like, you know, John Goodman is a national treasure. Like, he is amazing. I love everything about the old Roseanne. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give this Roseanne a chance. And it's not terrible. I will say this. This is what I said. I said it's not as funny as the old Roseanne. It's not as political as the new Will and Grace, but it's also not as funny as the new Will and Grace. But as a general rule, it's one of those things where if it's on, I'll watch it. But I'm not going to go out of my way to seek it out. It's not like, oh, I've got to watch this episode of Will and Grace. It's going to be like, oh, if, you know, Roseanne is on the television, cool. Right. You know, there are some interesting things that they're doing with characters. I love the fact that Darlene's son dresses in women's clothes and is unapologetic about it and doesn't care what you think. And it brought up, and they do a really good job of addressing those issues in the very Connor but sensitive way. So there are hints where you're like, okay, they handled the Trump versus Clinton thing. I thought they handled it rather deftly. They did a good job of kind of explaining where each side was coming from. I don't think that I think it's going to come out that Dan did not vote for Donald Trump. I think that's going to be a sticking point. I just feel it in my soul that that's going to be where they're going to go with it. But I can't get past some of the things that Roseanne has done as a comedian or a person.
No, neither can I. I can't.
And we didn't give. And someone made a point on Twitter that I thought was really interesting, that the same disregard for like Bill Cosby's career should have been given to Roseanne for some of the things that she has said and done. But there will always be a place for controversial white women in American culture.
I mean, I don't think that's entirely wrong. I mean, but at the same time, I remember when she first was on whatever night show she was on, and she said this stuff. I'm like, okay, well, maybe she's one of these people that is completely unhappy with the entire system, doesn't know where to go from here, but is basically like, I am completely fed up and over all of this. And I was like, I could see that, but then it was like, okay, I don't quite understand why you did this. I mean, when she said, do you want Pence? I was like, well, no. I mean, it's one of those like, no, we don't want Pence at all, because at least with this dumbass in office, he will say, I don't want to talk about it, and then he will tweet about it, or then say, and then talk about it. So he will tell us what he's going to do, even though he says, I'm trying to keep it a secret. So with Pence, though, it would be totally, I mean, I would definitely see...
Pence is the most terrifying thing to ever happen to me as a gay man and a black man, and just a man in general, human being, someone that breathes carbon, brings oxygen, and, Pence is terrifying. Yeah. But, I think that the difference where I think I have my issue with, where, to me, I feel like, okay, Trump is bad and Pence is worse, but come on in. Blue's here, guys. Yay.
Hello.
We are in the middle of the podcast crossover extravaganza. Right now we're talking about the new Roseanne reboot.
He saw it.
I watched it. He didn't watch it.
Why would you watch that?
Because, again, I loved The original Roseanne.
Or all the original cast is...
All the original cast is there. Everyone is back.
Okay.
It's everybody. It's, like I said, it's not... it's not bad. It's not something that I'm going to be like, hey, let's go watch this. Let's sit down and watch Roseanne.
That's good.
But it's not going to be something that I'm going to be like, if it's on, I'm not going to be like, ugh, turn that off. I'm going to be like, okay, we'll see. They handled some situations pretty well. Other situations they handled really badly, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But it's...
My understanding it was all handled badly, but okay.
No, it's not all handled badly. It's not all handled badly, but a lot of it is. But also there are people that are so upset with Roseanne as a comedian and as a person that they can't take that out. I was able to, we've talked about this before when it comes to to our faves as far as celebrities. We've learned, especially in the Black community, to take away the person and just appreciate the art for what the art is. We have to do it with R. Kelly. We had to do it with, which who's still canceled. I don't care what anyone says. We had to do it with Chris Brown, who's still canceled. I don't care what anyone says. We had to do it with Bill Cosby because I, for one, still love the Cosby Show. But we've had to learn to do that, to separate who the person, the art from the creator. And so I can look at something like Roseanne and be like, I can see why it is for what it is, what people are upset about it and feel their ways. But
she's terrible in real life and on her TV show.
She is, but there's enough people around her who are not terrible on the TV show. Because again, John Goodman is a national treasure, and you won't take that away from me.
I can see, I feel, and I can understand that, but it's hard for me because I feel hypocritical by patronizing the art, and then the person is turning out to be a real... I mean, there's some people like, okay, I can deal with whatever you're doing personally because some of that I understand, but when it's like the Roseanne level of, like, she is like 2 sentences short from putting on a red hat and marching around her neighborhood waving a flag.
She is, but the thing is
I still don't think she won't do that.
Yeah, I mean, there was an entire photo shoot with her dressed as Hitler with the cookies.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
Oh, there's a whole photo shoot. You have to look it up.
I don't know if I want to look it up now.
She's dressed as like Hitler in a kitchen, who baking Jew cookies.
Yeah, we're done. Wow. Yeah, I'm done with it. There's no way I'm watching the Roseanne reboot.
Really?
No, that's gone. Yeah, it was bad enough whenever. I mean, it's one thing whenever she'll, because we're talking about that, like that Pence's worst. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, all right, I'm gonna let that go. But then, basically calling that the high school kid, the Marjorie, whatever his name was, the guy, the kid from high school who's speaking up.
The Hitler salute thing.
Which it was a fist holding it up. I'm like, it's a fist. You would think people who are very familiar with Nazis would know what the Sieg Heil Nazi salute is.
Most of them do, and they're not Roseanne.
Because I was just like, oh, come on, really? And then that, no.
Yeah, it's so let's move into the other great conversation.
She was dressed as Hitler, apparently baking cookies.
It's the worst.
The thing?
It's the worst. It was a couple years ago that this was, and I'm not making excuses.
It just honestly, it seems like a lot of white people have really wanted to put on a swastika in some way, shape, or form, and they think it's funny, and I don't understand. I really just, I mean, I do, but I don't. It's like I've never felt like, oh yeah, this would be hilarious. Let's teach a dog to, Sieg Heil. And I saw that on the news. I was like, I've never seen like, oh, this is funny. I'm like, this is not a funny period of time. This is a horrible thing. There's other things like it. Why is this supposedly...
Yeah, that's it.
It's as terrible as it sounds, people.
It is as terrible as it sounds.
It's as terrible as it sounds.
And I feel bad for even... Now I feel guilty for even watching the reboot, but it's fine because I'm grown and I'll do what I want.
Well, I'm glad you watched it because... I mean, I don't speak for you, Blue, but I'm not going to watch it.
I'm good.
You're like, we're not doing that.
No.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about on this, and I'm glad that you're here for this, because I've given y'all all of the time that I'm going to give y'all to go and see this movie.
Spoiler alert.
And there ain't no spoiler alert. You should have seen it by now. It made over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Everybody should have seen it at least once. We're talking Black Panther, y'all.
Yes.
And how good it is. And we won't even get into storyline elements like that, but like how Shuri is the greatest person on the planet, and I want her to be my little sister.
Wait, what?
Shuri is amazing.
Yes, she is amazing, but now she's gonna be your little sister?
I want her to be my little sister. She's awesome. Like, what are those? Come on now. How did you bring back a meme from 2015 and make it amazing? It was awesome.
I mean, there was no part of the film that didn't work. I don't say about many films. Like, I don't have many favorites. I don't buy that many, but I'm buying this on Blu-ray because it was just.
Oh, absolutely.
I was sitting there like, this was awesome.
Don't scare me, colonizer. Come on now. Perfect.
She did have some of the best lines.
She had the best lines in the film. Ooh, we have another one. Hi, Sarah Lynn.
Hi.
Come on, sit down. Have a seat. We're in. Like, this is the greatest part about this podcast is that there's just you never know who's going to show up.
It's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
So we're talking Black Panther. We just started talking about it.
So good. Thank you.
So good. So let's talk Black Panther for a while. I saw it twice. I saw it once opening night, and then I saw it again. I took me and my partner took the girls here to go see it the actual Friday of opening night, and
So lucky.
yeah, I saw it Thursday and Friday, and I was going to see it. The next day was the day that we were hanging out with you, and I was like, we can go see it again 3 days in a row. I'm cool. Let's do it.
I remember that. I really thought about it, but then Laura got free tickets to one of the theaters. I'm like, we're going now. This is just like, are you sure? I'm like, I am absolutely, positively, definitely sure. It's like, we're going. I don't care what happens.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's talk about there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up about the movie without doing super heavy into spoilers for like the 6 people in the world who haven't seen it yet. Like, get on it.
Yeah.
The Killmonger do you think of him as a villain or an anti-hero?
Ooh.
Anti-hero. I can't quite put him in villain status. Only because I completely understand why he is doing what he's doing.
And when you look at his backstory.
Yeah.
I think that he is. I look at the same. I think he's an anti-hero. I think that this is someone who. I think that he is a character that could be anyone given his. That could very well have been T'Challa had the situations been different. Could very well have been. Any one of them could have been in there in that situation, and he wasn't. There were a lot of things that he was saying that was not wrong. I feel like his methods were a little off, and there was definitely some.
They were effective.
They were effective.
Well, but here's the thing: were they off?
I mean, you're trying.
Honestly, I mean, if you
had a
think
goal.
about
He achieved his goal.
if the movie was about him, his methods would not have been off, because you would have seen him losing his father. You would have seen him growing up, where he grew up in downtown LA, which is not.
It's not great.
Depending on the neighborhood that you grew up in, it's not fantastic. And then he went into the military, and they trained him. He found a place where he fit, and he found a family, and that family taught him what they do.
Right.
And he was doing what his family taught him to do. So if the movie was about Killmonger,
Was he wrong?
right?
I mean, given the situation and what was going
Yes,
on,
but
it makes sense.
It makes sense, but I also feel like the reason that I said that his methods were because I got where he was coming from, but I think for me, you did it. He didn't know T'Challa. T'Challa was a symbol for him, and rather than so that kind of that laser focus on I'm going to kill this man and take the throne is where I say he his method. I feel like his methods were off because
But the only reason you feel that way is because you knew T'Challa's backstory before you knew Killmonger's.
I also felt that it was very, in some ways, distortedly selfless. I mean, he's not doing this because he just wants the power. I mean, in the thing, he's like, we're going to do the following. We're going to make sure the people who are dealing with this, what I dealt with growing up and what I saw. I mean, he doesn't do this like, I'm just going to get power because, I want power. I'm seeing all these people who are dying, who are being oppressed and basically living lives that aren't worth living because of what other people are doing to them. If they had this technology, this would change their lives.
Right.
So he's trying to fix, he's like, this needs to be fixed, and he sees nobody doing that. Then basically he sees it very selfishly harbored in one area that they won't share with anybody else. So his response is basically, you all need to shape up. This is what we're going to do. I'm taking control to correct a wrong.
Right, but that also brings me to the idea of Wakanda in and of itself. One of the things that made the city great was that they had never been colonized. And the reason it had never been colonized is because it hid itself away. For me, as a person of color, it was awesome to this idea of what would have happened if we had allowed Africa to thrive and to flourish. You know, what would have happened if there had not been colonization. And
although I still have a problem with that. You remember the town?
Mm-hmm.
All of that technology, all of the non-colonization, and everybody's still living in huts. Can you help me out here?
Well, no. See, the thing is, and I
struggle with that.
You mean that's outside of the city limits?
Yeah. Well, no, because that was in his town.
Well, this is the thing.
It's outside of the
city.
It's outside of the castle, or outside of his
home.
Oh,
like when they're walking through.
When they're walking through the swamplands.
Yeah,
they're walking the streets.
They're still in huts.
It kind of looks like Agrabah.
Well, but you also have to think about it.
So this place is so technologically advanced, but you can't get real houses for these people.
Well, if you look, but the thing is that this is you are looking at that in the sense of that we don't know what their creature comforts were. And
if you were a king who was trying to serve your people, why do they look so underserved?
But I don't think they looked underserved. But to me, I don't think they looked underserved. They just they are closed off. So if you are closed off and you don't see, so they're not looking at housing or the city structure in the same way in which we see it, because we see other cities and we see other technology. All they know is Wakanda.
Well, we didn't. Did we ever see the inside of those huts? Because
we didn't.
Because maybe the outside is done in a more, I don't know.
Traditional.
I'm just trying to.
I never even thought about it like that.
So everybody's trying to help.
Just like something that's like environmentally friendly. I don't know. Maybe on the inside it's completely like different, but on the outside it's this way for energy saving. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think you have a point.
They fixed a guy who lost his arm, and they fixed another guy who had a spinal injury. You see my point?
I do see your point, but I think that we again look at. But I think we're also looking at that through our lives.
Well, no, because we go into their space in the lab area. Her lab is decked out.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Well, maybe the
amazing.
inside of their houses look like the labs.
Right? Like we don't.
But you hit the streets, and it's like, wait, what happened?
And you know, there were carts. There were the vibranium carts that were going around. Like we don't know.
Yeah, they had flying cars. Man.
We don't know what their lives look like.
Wait a minute. They had 5 tribes though.
There were 5 tribes, and we will get to one of those in a second.
Maybe because of that. Maybe that's because there's a certain cultural aspect, which is we will live in this way, such as
I could see that for the guy who challenged T'Challa.
Umbutu.
Yes,
that was my favorite character. I've got to call it right now.
I could see it for him
because
they were still doing furs and they were living high up in the mountain area, and so I could see it for them. But when you get into the main city, I couldn't see it.
When he asked them if they were done, are y'all done? I said, that is me. All of this love, flourishing, remote, emotion. Are y'all done?
That was, to me, it was the strongest character because there was such just real moral and ethical standards there that was just not. He didn't freaking waver from.
Well, because he didn't like his thing was he didn't. While he did not necessarily agree with the things that T'Challa was doing, he recognized that T'Challa is the king of that nation, and and so he is the person who should be in charge. And there was this recognition that we can understand where he's coming from and what his methods were and what he was trying to do. You know, at the end of the day, the reason that Wakanda was not colonized is because they didn't know it was there. Sure. And, you know, they didn't know what the resources were. And so the idea is, as soon as the colonizers know that resource exists there, it then becomes a target. Which, like, if you look at comic books and things like that, the Wakanda in the comic books, it does become a target. It does become, now people want to come and take over Wakanda because they see what's there, and they see that there are resources there, and so it's a double-edged sword. And I think that's why I feel like the country itself is such a great character. We look at this as a setting, and there's a rich history in of the idea of this is a country that has never been taken over. It is a country where it allowed the African people that were there to flourish. Even Ubuntu and all of the other tribes, they were allowed to just kind of live their lives, and this is where what is the word? Evolve at their pace. Yeah. And it, to me, as it's also, this is what could have been. Right. Not necessarily with the vibranium or all of that stuff, but this is what could have been. Mm-hmm. This is Africa could have been, when you think about the resources that are in Africa to begin with.
Oh yeah.
What could Africa had looked like had it been left alone? So there's that. The other character I want to talk about because is the Ubuntu as a character, and that, first of all, I want his throne. With
that was an awesome throne.
With the sticks, I was like, who would have thought that just hanging some random logs on your would look so damn good? Ryan Coogler, did a great job as directing this movie, and so many little things that like when they're in the scene in Tokyo, and Lupita's in green, and why can't I think Chadwick's in the black. And what is her name? The one who plays Michonne, but is in the red. So when they're standing there, it's the African flag, And when she pulls, they're in. It's red, black, and green.
I didn't know if that was intentional or not.
It was intentional. Yeah. And and when she takes the wig and throws it at the guys,
I enjoyed every fight sequence. I'm kind of a car guy, so all the chase sequences were just extremely appealing to me, and
those were awesome.
Those were amazing. Yeah. I was telling Jayson earlier, my favorite scene was whenever the general cuts off the door of the SUV, just throws it at the guy, just bam. I was just like, that. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and there was another line that I feel like doesn't get a lot of attention, but I think it's really important when it's right towards the middle of the movie. Right after the Tokyo scene, when Black Panther has can't remember the guy's name. It's been a while since we watched it.
The bad guy.
The bad guy, and she says, everyone's watching you, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's this idea that no one. He is a representation for
an entire nation.
The entire nation. Whereas this guy, who does these terrible things, just gets to be the victim,
right.
And it doesn't matter what he's done. It's, now he has the potential to just become a villain from that one mistake, or that one, not even a mistake, because had he killed him,
a carriage of justice, yeah,
right, and who in his right as the king would have been within his right to do so. Mm-hmm. Because this guy committed crimes against his nation. Mm-hmm. Had it been anyone else, we'd have just been like, well,
just get what you get.
I mean, we've seen Captain America and Thor, kill people indiscriminately throughout the series, and he carries his entire nation on his back. And that one mistake, and it's just, that was one of the things that just kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, there are these very throughout, Claw. There are these very peppered throughout the movie are these very prescient, lines that, that I didn't catch the first time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I was like, that was just a great movie. It was amazing. But then the second time, I was able to kind of dig in and and say, okay, oh wow, that was really good. And that last scene with Michael B. Jordan, Killmonger, having that conversation where he talks about how, well, we can save you. And he's just like, no, bury me, under the sea with my ancestors. Yeah, it's just like all of these little moments where you're just like, wow, it perfectly kind of encapsulated that feeling of the Black experience.
Well, speaking of little moments that I think can get lost if you don't look at the context or if you're not looking from a particular perspective, what I really enjoyed was the female presence.
All the badass women.
And it was so nice to have a culture that celebrated their women, that didn't keep them under their thumb. Like if you look at, the lab and the STEM program, and just to empower women and show them what is possible in STEM.
Right.
And you can have a hand in it. Just because you're a girl, that doesn't mean you can't go into mathematics. That doesn't mean you can't go into science. That doesn't mean, and these are all things that women right now are having a hard time with. Like if you look at some of the different Twitter hashtags and things like that, like when girls were talking about being in the lab and some scientists have said, well, women are distracting. And so you saw all these female scientists start tweeting pictures of themselves in everyday lab gear. They're not attractive. I'm sorry, there's nothing attractive about a hood and some goggles and some gloves.
Well, speak for yourself. No,
you know what
I think perfect. And I think that women...
But do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So, we're...
But if you're not there, but you're at the lab to work, you're not there to do that. If you're there and you're thinking about that, clearly you're not paying attention to your work.
Well, and I also think that there, and I read this, a lot of women, especially in STEM and in math, in labs, will purposely not dress attractively so that people don't assume that, oh, well, because you're a woman and and you're dressed in your heels and because you wanted to look cute today, that you're not supposed to be there, or you're not
serious
or not serious about it.
Yes,
it's
why can't they be pretty and serious?
Well, the thing is that this never happens with... I've never had that happen whenever I would go to work and I would be dressed up for some event that I was having afterwards. If I was, maybe going out to dinner with my girlfriend and I decide, well, I'm going to be at work and immediately go there afterwards, so I should put on something really nice, like a very fancy suit. No one ever looks at me and goes that way. It's always, wow, you got dressed up. It's always nice accolades or compliments, but never the other side of, are you sure you really want to wear that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Clearly you just want attention.
Are you sure that's appropriate?
No, it's always, you must have a job interview. Someone must be looking at you. It's always this higher level crapola, but it never happens. I don't see that happening on the other side of it. It's always what you just talked about. It's always what you're distracting. You're causing a problem by what you're wearing. And it's like, but then I don't see that happening anytime, and it's complete and utter bullshit. I mean,
well, that's what made me excited about seeing this. And then the strong women, the female army.
Right, the Dora Milaje.
And what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of the American Indian tribes, a lot of them are matriarchal. Like the tribe that I grew up, when I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York, for those of you who don't know, who haven't watched the show, and the Tuscarora Indian Nation is in that area. And they are a matriarchal society. Cinderella Printup was the chief for years, and it was interesting having that dichotomy growing up, because I knew a lot of the people from the nation. We went to school together and things like that, and the way they thought and the way they looked at different things was really interesting to get that perspective so young, where if you don't have that, you don't know about that.
Right.
And so it's always the patriarchy. You have to sit down, be quiet, shut up, you're a woman, you have to be nice, and to see their strengths celebrated.
Right.
And to see them given the accolades that they deserved, and the respect and the esteem that they were held in. It was so empowering and wonderful and amazing, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, imagine if we looked at all women this way, what the world could achieve.
Right.
They could
when
stop
we were
rhinos
together.
with a look.
I know, she could stop a rhino with a look. Right.
When she said, you will not. But I think the last thing that I want to talk about in regards to Black Panther is why it was important. And this has nothing to do with the movie itself, other than the fact, we all can sit here and agree that it was a great movie.
Amazing, wonderful. Go see it if you have not seen it.
I mean, for the 4 people who've seen it.
I went from 6 to 4.
I mean, because since then there have been 2 more showings of Black Panther.
Right.
Yeah, they paused the podcast. I gotta go.
I gotta go right now.
Come back to it. Yeah.
But for you 3, what's important about it is it's that representation. It's seeing someone who looks like you in a position of strength, in a position of power. I think a lot of times, it's really difficult because I had someone say, "Oh, I thought it was a great movie, but I don't understand what the big deal about it is." And I think that it's when you're so used to seeing superheroes and people who look like you that you miss when it looks like someone else. Like it's because it's commonplace. So if you've always had Wonder Woman and you've always had Superman and you've always had Spider-Man and Thor and and they've looked like you, that's something that you're like, when you're playing make-believe as a child, you can be like, I'm Superman and I'm Thor and I'm this and I'm that. But like little black kids, if they were playing someone's like, I'm Superman, well, you can't be Superman because Superman is white, he doesn't look like you. Now they have, well, I can be Black Panther, or I can be, and little girls can say, well, I can be Shuri. That now there is people that they can be. They can say, this is, well, I want to get into the STEM program because look at Shuri, or I want to learn to do this because look at what these people did.
I want to take martial arts.
Right.
Because
T'Challa, is out here flipping over cars and shit. You know what I mean? Like,
I want a shield blanket.
It's that, and it seems like it's something small, especially to us as adults. Because we've lost that sense of kind of wonder, imagination, but kids have it. So they're one of the greatest things that I've ever seen. Made a tear to my eye was watching. There's a video that was going around Facebook right after the premiere, and it was these 2 little black boys, and they were, pointing out who they were, on the film, and it was just like, this is what it's about. This is why it's important, because now these kids finally have something that they can look up to, or they see themselves on a screen that isn't a drug dealer or a prostitute or a thug, and I hate that word.
Sorry.
It's fine. I hate it.
All the typical tropes.
The tropes, the magical Negro who just comes and saves the white person's life. You know what I mean? Like it's a. We've talked about it before.
It's a trope.
It's a trope.
Total, yeah.
Like Bagger Vance?
Yeah.
Like Bagger Vance,
yeah.
But like there's this, or the Mammy, or that you don't have any. These were fully fleshed out characters who made good choices and bad choices, and you rooted for them, and and you were when T'Challa got his ass whooped twice, because he did.
Wait, now
he got his ass whooped two times.
Once.
Those times,
No,
2 times.
one time.
Because beat that ass, and I'm
No,
saying it
because
wrong.
he won that.
No, he tired him out, but he whooped that ass. Let's just be real. With that, things didn't look. Things were not looking good for your boy T'Challa.
Do you think he actually pretended, to lose? Like,
no, I think he was literally getting his ass whooped.
No. I did not T'Challa.
Oh,
but
Killmonger or
Bucktooth.
Yeah, I think he just
pretended because he didn't seem very really wanted to do it. He's like, okay, I'll just do this. This will go into it. And then because later on he's literally offered here's this powerful stuff you can take. Please take this. We're really asking. We're desperate. He's like, no. He's on ice back there. You can give it to him.
Right.
He
didn't really want it. T'Challa got his ass whipped twice. It is what it is. He's still king. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
he
survived. He survived. But he survived though. He didn't die. He got thrown off a waterfall, and he didn't die.
Yeah. So
again, I'm only gonna give him one good ass whooping.
You gonna have to give him half because he took at least half an ass whooping that first time. But he's
for the 2 people who left who hadn't seen it. Go and vote.
That should be a good poll. You should put that on your.
Do you think Chuck got his ass whooped twice?
Once or twice.
It was a once or twice, because I personally think it was twice, and there are a group of people who also believe me, who are there with me. He got his ass whooped 2 times. It is what it is. He still came out on top. Where it counts, he won. But No, twice.
One good time. The one time when he was thrown over a waterfall, and you just never gonna let him forget it.
Nope. I'm not. It is what it is.
Well, you know, what you were saying about the importance of the movie, I think another theme that I really loved that ran through it was the family.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Angela Bassett.
Oh my God. Okay,
we could spend a whole episode on how Angela Bassett deserves an award for just this one
Yes.
scene, and she may have had 2 lines.
But she was amazing, you know, and just the family dynamic and showing, like you said, instead of a trope, and you know, it was an actual dynamic, fleshed out. All the characters were actual, all had dimension and
Right.
depth and sides, and it was so fantastic to see that, and them working together to bring back what they knew needed to happen. You know, it's just, it was...
And when Killmonger said, "Hi, Auntie,"
yeah.
like, I felt that in my spirit. I was like, you know what? That's the kind of, "Hey, Auntie." I was like, that's the kind of petty I like. But, okay, so we're hitting at about, we're hitting at about an hour and 20.
Okay.
And so we're gonna end it there. Will you come back before the end of the month and we'll finish up the autism stuff? Because I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Be on the lookout for the podcast crossover part 2. Sarah and Blue, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. Didn't mean to crash it.
It's fine. You know what? It is what it is. And I didn't do this earlier, but I want to do it right now. It has been 1,434 days since Flint had clean water.
Okay.
How many hours was that?
That equates to, because we looked it up, 34,416 hours.
In the United States of America, I want to make this very, very clear. This is not a foreign country. This is not a third world country. Sorry, I'm throwing up air quotes. You know, third world country. This is in the United States of America. A city where they pay taxes does not have clean water. Are you really okay with... Come on, seriously, are we okay with this?
We're not. Those of us here are not okay with this, but you know, I just want to make sure. But this is going until their water is clean. Every episode, we're going to highlight how long it's been since they've had clean water, because this is a problem, and it's
disgusting.
Normally we try to end on a happy note, but I just wanted to make sure that y'all are aware of that. And on that note. My name is Jayson, and this has been KC Caffeine, and...
I'm Leo Jones, and this has been Neurologic.
You guys have a great night, and stay woke, folk.
Neurologic is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit creativecommons.org/licenses/by-nc-nd/4.0 or send the letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, California 94042, USA. Neurologic uses the song Furious Freak, created by Kevin MacLeod, for its intro and outro music. Visit him at incompetech.com. Furious Freak is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, creativcommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. You can reach Leo Jones and Neurologic by email at neurologicpodcast@gmail.com.